Welcome to the Dad Challenge channel. My name is Josh. It's my second video today. It's the first time I've ever done 2 in a row. And the reason I'm getting on here again, sorry, I'm in the mustache. Sorry. The reason I want to get on here today, I wanted to talk about this thing that happened last night, kind of exploded on Twitter, about Justin Bieber being accused. And like just somebody, it's weird because somebody put a tweet out and then just everything exploded. Now, a couple of things are hitting me about this thing. One, that this person that put out this accusation against him, I mean, this guy has 112 million followers on Twitter. He's got a huge fan base, and it strikes me that he's responding to this one because I'm sure this has happened many times. So then he comes out with this giant, list of here's why that can't be true. What I want to talk today about is basically this whole situation about being a dad who is a dad of a daughter and a dad of sons. And how do we navigate this if this type of thing ever happens to our kids? Now, is it likely that our kids are going to be international, world famous superstars that make $300 million? Very unlikely. And if it is likely, I'd like to be friends first with you. Let's be friends. But it strikes me in this era that we should be talking about this with our kids. I want to daisy chain that into a conversation about consent. I've been covering a lot about family vloggers, obviously, basically only. And I want to tie that in how that works for that, because I had a conversation on Diane's channel on YouTube the other day, and one big glaring topic popped up about consent, and about how all these kids are on these channels and they're clearly not able to consent, and if they are, they might not want to later. So we're going to talk about all that really quick. But the whole thing with Justin Bieber has got me. And here's why. Look, and you might hate me after this, sorry. I absolutely love Justin Bieber's music. Am I weird? Probably. I'm a musician, right? So I appreciate good music. This kid, regardless if he writes his songs or not, which he probably doesn't, which he creates music or not, he probably doesn't, he can sing. His music is really good. Also, he lives like 30 minutes from me. So it's kind of cool. I just have always liked this kid. I know he's gone through a lot of troubles and issues, but I've got a kid, I've got an 18-year-old, growing up, seeing how their teens grow up. This kid was like thrown into like fame super young, given hundreds of millions of dollars, and everybody expected him to be an angel. It's just, when that's another show maybe about his parents and how that all worked, because basically I'm pretty sure the moment he went into fame and with Scooter Braun and everything else, like his mother was just kind of was just there to help. And everybody else raised this kid, basically. And I love Justin Bieber, and I think his mom's really cool. She's got a great book out there. So I'm a fan to start. So full disclosure, I don't think Justin Bieber did this. I think he's not stupid enough to do something like this. Also, I'm like, I don't know if this is super gross to say this, or if this is dumb, or this will get me in trouble, but when you're an international superstar of very good looks and very immense talent and rich beyond words, I feel like people who do dumb things to women are men who, like, if you look at Weinstein and all these rich guys, are disgusting. So they have to like either pay women to do what they want, or they take advantage of them because of the power position they're in. But I don't feel like this guy struggled getting anything. Does that make sense? Getting what he wanted from ladies. So that's not an excuse to say that just because he could get it, he didn't take it if he wanted it, because people in power do have this position of like, well, I'm powerful, I'm rich, I should get what I want. He gave all these receipts, he gave all these things. I said, look, there's no way I could have done this. This is ridiculous. And during this time that we live in, he has to do that, or he's basically screwed. He has to come out and say adamantly, no, I didn't, no. If you just ignore it, you can be canceled, you can do this. It's like the world is in this culture right now that if you did something 10 years ago, or if you did something like if you said a racist comment 10 years ago, or you did blackface 10 years ago, unless you're the Prime Minister of Canada, you can do blackface as many times you want. You're good to go. As long as you have the right ideology and you did it, it's cool because you've learned from it now, right? But if you did a long time ago and you're still conservative, you're a terrible person. I know. That's kind of where we are right now. But all that to say, he has to prove himself. And so it got me thinking about this idea of consent, this idea of kids that I'm raising in this culture of like, if something ever happened, man, I'm so scared. This is why. Now I have a 13-year-old boy, I have an 18-year-old son, I have a 5-year-old boy, and then I have a daughter. And part of me says, I'm so excited that women are being believed more than ever before, right? That it's just super important that if someone were to ever hurt my daughter, that she's believed, right? And if someone ever hurt my daughter, by the way, I'd probably end up in jail because I would destroy them. I'm fiercely loyal to my family, and like even my friends' families and stuff, and people that I like, I'm loyal anyway. So if someone were to hurt my family, and I think a lot of dads and moms feel this way. Like there's just a lot, it would take a lot for me not to just want to hurt that person, right? So part of me is saying here, like, part of me is scared and part of me is excited that women are finally getting the platform they deserve to call out behavior that is bad. And I know a lot of people are probably going back in the day and thinking, maybe during the time it wasn't such a big deal that happened to me, but now that I'm thinking about it, that thing that happened to me back when I was high school or whatever it is, that was a bad thing. And there's nothing wrong with calling people out for doing bad things in their past, right? I was a teenage boy at one time. I'm sure I did some stupid stuff, showed my butt to a lot of people. I'm sure I did, I'm not the most innocent person in the world either. Nobody is innocent. And so what I'm trying to say is that I'm really scared that, okay, look, I have two sons that are old enough to be dating, and one of them is dating and one of them is now just like hanging out with girls all day long. What I'm worried about is that because these boys are actually quite good looking, and I'm biased, but I also do think that my sons are very attractive. Like they're good looking boys. One of them's 6'4", and Tristan's coming up to like, he's going to be like 6+. Girls like tall boys. They've got dark eyes. They're very handsome. They're very funny. They're very personable. People really like them. And girls like will throw their attention at these boys. And I see it. Some of them times they don't really see it because they're kind of naive. And like a lot of 13-year-old boys, girls could be literally flirting, being like, we're going to get married, have my baby. And they're like, oh, I don't get it. I don't know. It goes over their head. So what I'm worried about someday is that, and this might sound gross, but this is a true worry of a parent and probably a lot of parents, is that someday some girl's going to approach them and they're going to get shot down or they're going to get denied and they're just going to come out with a thing because they're pissed. And I'm not saying that this happens all the time. I'm saying it does happen. And in a culture of like, believe the woman, which you should, we're also going to have people who are going to get dragged along who are wrongly accused, and it does happen. And so that's a worry. And so that's why I'm saying it's such a hard thing to wrestle with, where you on one hand I want my daughter to be believed if something ever happens. I'm also going to raise her to not be a complete jackass and be a total douchebag and like accuse somebody of doing something that they didn't do. Like that's important too, right? But on the other hand, I've got boys who have had girls message them and do things like even against their will and send them things that they shouldn't be receiving, even though they didn't ask for those things, and maybe they did, I don't know. But and I'm scared that one day that maybe something will happen. I'm not saying that they're so good looking that they have so many girls on them, but this is a worry of parents. I'm just saying, if you have a kid who's especially social, who's popular, or whatever, if a girl doesn't get the attention, they can literally just say the thing. And if you don't believe me, you're naive, because this could be a thing. Right now, if someone were to text me or text the principal at the school, so here's what happened here. I have a story for you. My son was at the park. My son can be a little bit of a wiener. Okay, he's a 12-year-old boy going through puberty, and like a lot of 12-year-old boys. I'm not excusing it as boys will be boys. That's not what I'm trying to say here. But what I'm saying is he was at the park, and him and his buddies had their pants down below their butt cheek, but their underwear were still on. Okay, and they were doing the stupid dance, the Fortnite dance. I don't know what it was. They're at the park, a bunch of kids around. Probably shouldn't have been doing it. They shouldn't have been doing it. But again, I'm not gonna psychologically meticulate what the heck a 12-year-old boy's thinking when they're all doing something stupid, because everybody was a teenager at one point. Everybody did something stupid when they were young. Do I think that this is like a punishable offense by law? No, I don't think. I think this is a kid being a kid and just kind of let them be kids. But a mom went on the local Facebook group here of our community and flipped her S, all like, nudity at the park. This is not consent. My 8-year-old daughter had to see your son's butt. She didn't know it was me. I didn't call. And I was like, what the heck's going on? What? Because as soon as someone complains on my Facebook group locally, everybody's like, it's just a big gossip thing. It's kind of funny and it's kind of cool, and sometimes it's like, really. But this lady was absolutely pissed. So I reached out. I didn't actually. So I went to Tristan's room and I said, "Are you guys at the park today?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Were you guys showing your butt to kids?" And he's like, "No." I said, "Look, this lady is about to call the police, apparently, and I need you to be truthful with me." And then he started crying. He was super nervous because as soon as I said the word police, because my son grew up in super poverty, okay, in really low income areas until we adopted him, right? And so he does not trust police. It's just kind of bred into you if you grow up in a low income area, okay? Started freaking out. He's like, "Yeah, we were there. And he told me the whole truth." So what happened was, this happened after he got back from school. So he got called out on it, and the principal brought him into this happened outside of school. The principal brought him into the office and freaked on him. Said, "You won't graduate. You won't go end of the year trip." All this because the mom had called the school and called these boys out and said, look, this is what happened. There's like, and she said there was nudity and all this stuff, and there wasn't. And this is why. That principal believed that mother without any evidence. Took my son into the principal's office and freaked on him and said, you might not graduate. You're on thin ice, blah, blah, blah. Never been to the principal's office ever before, by the way. The teacher was out in the yard, had known this mom who called into school, grabbed my son by his neck. Not hard, I guess, just probably said, look, focus on me. And said, if I ever hear that you ever do something like that again, like basically there'll be hell to pay. When my son came home and told me that, I freaked. Now, it has to be said that I reached out to the principal and I talked to him about it, and everything got solved. And actually, we're friends now. We got it all solved. Everything was figured out. But here's what happened, okay? He didn't actually show his bum to anybody. They were just dancing around with their underwear hanging out. And this mom who decided, her daughter said, oh, there's boys at the park, and who said something, who wasn't even at the park, said something and then freaked and then called the school and did everything. Again, this was outside of school. So him getting in trouble at school for something that happened outside of school was absolutely inappropriate anyway. So here's why I'm scared of this. Because that mother was to be believed, even though it was not true what happened. It all came out in the end. Everybody's fine now. But like, I was calling lawyers, everything. That's how intense this was. So because of a stupid decision he made, a 12-year-old boy, by the way, he was then ostracized at school. A teacher put her hand on his neck. And you have to understand, kids who go through trauma, who are adopted, even if you don't know anything, don't put your hands on a kid who you know in his file there's trauma. Kids who are adopted, kids who are fostered, it's just better to just take your hand, don't put your hands on them ever, right? That really affected him. And so he was going through these struggles, can't sleep because he thought he was going to get arrested and all this stuff. So this was traumatizing for my 12-year-old boy. I was pissed at him because I thought he did it too, until he actually came out and told me the truth, and his buddies corroborated the story. So he got in a lot of trouble when he shouldn't have. And so the issue I'm having here is that this person said this, and she was believed by all these other moms on this group. Oh, this is atrocious. Call the police, call CPS, blah, 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 nonstop. And it wasn't true. Now, the other side is if something ever happens to my daughter, I want her to be believed. Can you see where I'm at this? If my son here's another thing. If my sons ever did do something and it was proved that they did, and they went through all the trials and the processes and everything, I mean, I would not stand by them to a degree. Like, look at Brock, what's his face? The guy who raped a girl unconscious by a dumpster. Like, his parents stood by him and said, oh, now he's not going to be able to enjoy his life, and for 20 minutes of action, he's got 20, okay. This guy's dad needs a punch in the lips, by the way. This guy's dad was a total, I can't believe he said that. Like, stand by your kids as much as you can for the mistakes they make, yes. But if they do something absolutely crazy, don't ever justify it by being like, they're a good kid. You can stand by them and say what they did was wrong, and I support the justice that's going to happen to them. I will always be their parent, and I will stand by them. But don't come out in favor of what they did and just be like, well, think about this. Because that Brock, whatever's guy, that swimmer from Stanford, that guy, I hope forever he has to live in a box. And hope someday justice comes to him another way, because a judge wouldn't give him justice because he was a good boy who swam on the same university team that judge was at. Like, think about this for a second, okay? This is why it's so infuriating that justice doesn't happen, is why I talk about it. So I tell you that story about my son because that is what I'm scared of. One day another girl might say, he might turn down a girl or whatever, or something, or say something, and a girl might be like, oh, he touched me inappropriately. And then what happens to my son? But one thing that struck me what this woman said was that she said consent. She yelled the word consent from the top of her lungs all day. Consent, consent, consent. They didn't consent to seeing your butt. They didn't consent to seeing nudity. These kids on the playground. And I sort of get what she's saying. It got me thinking about this word consent, and the conversation I had with the other YouTubers the other day. All of these family vloggers and everything that's online, and all of our kids that we put online, and I do the same thing. I post pictures on Facebook, which is private, but Instagram, and I do some things, and I ask my kids consent. And everybody's going to be like, rolling their eyes. This big thing that came out that says, if your kids don't want to hug their grandparents, don't force them to do that, or their aunt and uncle, or whoever. Don't force them to show affection for other people because it's a nice thing to do. If your kid doesn't want to do that, and I used to be on the opposite end of this. I'm like, nah, I'm the parent. I can tell my kid it's nice to be nice to people. If your grandparents want to hug, give your grandparents a hug. I'm the kind of guy that was like, just do it, right? It doesn't hurt you. But now I'm starting to realize that consent is a massive part of what we should be teaching our kids about everything. Not saying that if your teenage boy is going to date a girl And the sex talk you have is, instead of talking about sex and pregnancy, you're like, make sure you get her to sign this waiver before you have sex. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it sort of is like that. But part of this whole thing is consent, consent, consent. And I'm teaching my kids that their consent matters. If you look at Ruby's page on 8 Passengers, she's going to have the talk with her daughter. And there's probably multiple instances where she has a camera in front of her kids' faces and her kids like, I don't want you to be on this. You can even tell by their body language, they don't want to be on camera. But when Ruby keeps filming, what she's telling her kid that she's filming, and the other kids and everybody watching who supports them, that you don't need your kid's consent and that your consent doesn't matter. What I want to do matters over everything that you do. And that's disgusting. So one thing that I do in my house is I love tickling my kids. But if they say stop tickling me, I stop tickling my kids. That seems like such a small and stupid thing, but I do it because that's their voice saying, please don't, and I'm not going to. Right? Now, a lot of parents are going to say, well, then you have to ask your kids, would you like some vegetables? Would you like to eat this whole grain? Would you like to, and you have to ask their consent to feed them and do all these things. No. Here's what I'm saying. When it comes to their body, you have to start at a young age telling kids, like, it's your body and what you want to do with your body is your choice. And so when someone asks you to do something with your body, like a hug, a kiss, hold hands, whatever it is touching you, you just got to make sure that you express your consent and say, look, I don't want you doing that, and make sure that comes out. And I have to teach my kids that your consent matters. Someone wants something from you, you have to say yes or no. So when my daughter comes on to sing with me, I'm going to ask Everly, do you want to be in this video? Well, she asks me to be on the videos, and that's fine. But if my kids ever told me, look, I don't want to be in that video, I would stop recording. There's no way I would put that on TV. There's no way I would put that on YouTube. Ruby, literally, you hear her kids say these things, and then on YouTube, she's not getting consent from her kids. So the overall family vlogger world, the major issue is that some of them do it right. Some of them are awesome. They don't make the kids the forefront. But those who do, you have to really, really start thinking, these kids aren't consenting to this. And they're too young, even if they say so you can't ask a 4-year-old, do you consent to this? And they're like, yeah, I do. Even my 7-year-old, I kind of struggle with like, but I think my daughter is smart enough to make a decision because we taught her what consent means. We understand. She's like, yeah, I want to be on that. I'm like, we hear the ramifications of what happens if you say yes to this, right? Somebody might leave a nasty comment. They might not like your voice. They might think your teeth are too big or whatever. I just say, look, you just have to be prepared. And so it's my job to teach my kids that what your consent means. But at the same time, I struggle with that because I want my kids to give their Nana and Papa a hug, and I don't want to be like, hey, I'm not going to stand there and say, okay, well, it's time to go. Do you consent to giving Nana and Papa a hug? I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say, go give your Nana and Papa a hug. And if they say no, I'm not going to push it, right? I'm not going to say, well, just do it anyway. I'm not going to get mad about it. But I'm also not going to ask for every single thing that, hey, I'm about to give you a hug, daughter. Do you consent to me giving you a hug? No, let's not be stupid. And some people want to take it to that level. We're talking about the fringes, right? Fringe. There's fringes of everybody. There's fringe that says, no, I'm the parent. You do what I tell you to do. The end. That's all. You get the other fringe where they're super liberal and they're like, hi, sing song. I'm going to approach you now with a bedtime story. Is it okay if I read this to you and snuggle in? No? Yeah? No? Okay. So I'll leave. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about really important things when it comes to consent and teaching your kids that consent is very, very important. And so here's how we solve the issue of the Justin Bieber thing and me being scared of my son's going to get accused of something he didn't do and my daughter's not going to be believed, is we just teach all of our kids about consent. And I don't think school is teaching consent enough. And this needs to be a massive part of our education to our kids. Someone said this the other day, was it Dr. Kirk? He said, why don't you sit down with your kid, go through all the ads that are being pumped into their eyeballs and talk about what those ads are doing and what they're showing to your kids. And say, this is that ad and this is what they're trying to achieve by showing this to you. Imagine we gave our kids this type of wisdom and understanding about everything that comes their way, that they can attack it by saying, oh, I know what they're trying to do. So now I know how to combat that in my brain instead of just blindly following it. If someone approaches me that's a stranger and says, oh, your dad said I need to pick you up, get in the car. Someone approaches you and says, can I have a hug at school? Or even another student that says, can I have a hug? Or someone wants to touch you. Or if you're a teenager and girls are approaching you and saying, I want to touch you. Or the opposite, where boys are trying to get at you and touch you or throw comments your way that are not wanted or unwarranted. If we don't understand consent at this point, if we don't teach our kids consent right now when they're young and understanding what it could mean, we're failing our kids. And so wanted to touch on those two things just because I think that's really important. We're missing that these family vloggers, if they don't have consent of their children, this should be legislated. A lot of people are asking me in comments, what are you doing about it except for talking about it? Well, talking about it I think is important, but what you can do about it is you need to find a lobbyist or a politician who agrees with your stance, who says, look, YouTube, you're no longer allowed to monetize anything with kids. YouTube took a step and said, look, if you have kids in your thing and it's for kids, no comments. I get it. Doesn't do much. Predators are still out there. Like, that's maybe another video, but these predators are watching your kids, and that's kind of gross as far as I'm concerned. What would happen if all of a sudden YouTube said, no more monetizing videos with kids in them? Unless there's like some kind of contract or like whatever in place. Like, they have all these major steps you have to go through first in order to do it. Like, you have to have a trust fund for your kids, that all that percentage of that money goes into that account, but you have to prove it and all this stuff. What would happen? They would all disappear. Especially Ruby's channel would disappear. People aren't realizing that these things can be good, right? These channels can be great. A lot of people get really, really great stuff out of these channels. They're learning things. They're being inspired to be better moms, or, oh, you have that issue. I had that issue. I'm really glad that you talked about that. There is some really good stuff. But it's really about the money sometimes in the end. I'm not saying everybody does it for the money. I know it's not true, but really, if this is your career, this is your career. And I can't blame you either if this is your career. But at the same time, there are kids in this equation. We need to give them the space to say yes or no. And when a kid, what happens when Ruby's kids come later and say, Mom, I don't want that video down. My acne video down. My puberty video down. Where you gave us crap, where you grounded me. I want that stuff down. What if she says no to that? What recourse does a child have except to sue their parents and become estranged from their family that they love? Right? We can look on from the outside of this and say, well, those kids must hate their parents. They don't hate their parents. I've got 2 adopted kids who's, like, I don't want to get too much into it. They should not love their mother the way that they do. They have this bond, attachment to and they should. But it's like, even if your parents do you wrong, they're still your parents. You still love them. And, in the overarching scheme of all things bad that a parent can do to their kids, this is low. Okay, it's not that big of a deal, but at the same time, it could cause major issues down the road. And so consent is everything. And if we're not asking our kids consent to be on TV or on YouTube and all these things, putting their life out there for everybody to see, you're doing it wrong. And that's just my opinion, man. And if you don't like it, I'm sure you'll tell me in the comments below. So this video is important. Consent is everything. Teaching our daughters to ask for consent and to protect themselves and to reach out to people they trust when something's wrong, and also teaching them not to just like say things willy-nilly, even if they don't mean it, if they're just joking. That's important too. Teaching our sons even more so, and this is going to sound sexist, but that they should be less aggressive. They should ask consent, and they should be more gentlemen than anything ever before, than any time we've ever had people on earth, is to just be the most likable, most trusting person ever. And here's how you do that. You make sure that everybody's comfortable around you, and you make sure that before you do anything, that people are cool with it. Teaching our kids that like consent is everything should be paramount. That's what I have to say about that. Like and subscribe, or don't. I don't care. This was therapeutic. This was important to me. My wife is an important topic to my wife as well. If you have any comments, concerns, reach out. I'd love to talk to you. Yeah, this was a serious one. Sorry, it wasn't very funny, but this is my commentary on consent, and I think it's a really important topic. And I'm glad you're listening. Glad you're still here. I'll talk to you soon.